Sir, ako, first question. After so many delays since
Mhm,
February 2020, the
mhm,
announcement of the termination,
mhm.
tingin niyo, sir, what was this just a delaying tactic? Was this just, hindi ba talaga to ipapatupad at all? It was just some sort of uh, panakot ba, sir? Would you say something like that, sir? Ngayong
Well, it
binawi
was
na nila.
entering into a more of a comical situation already when we would see that it would always get extended. You know, the very basis of it being suspended was actually due to the that flap over Bato's visa and the criticism on the human rights record of Duterte. Okay, so it also came in the heels of the Magnitsky declaration, the Magnitsky law, which penalized which would penalize countries that would be seen as against human that would be violating human rights. So it came at the heels of that, and then um, he suspended, but it was a declaration of suspension. But things were still proceeding, and but in fact, it was um, it was, how do I say this? Not anticlimactic. There was a, it it was overtaken by the pandemic, so the full effect of it wasn't really seen, because uh, even the United States had to shut down because of pandemic concerns, and their military was affected by infections. One of the most um, notorious infection was the USS I think the Roosevelt, I think one of their super carriers was hit by COVID infection, and that was the super carrier that was operating in the forward area. So you would have that, so everything had to be downscaled. Okay, but that being said, their relations continued. The VFA threats to suspend it, but it didn't stop the Balikatan being from going on. Like for example, this year alone, we had the Balikatan, so it really wasn't that effective. And in fact, it was um, it was not really well received from within the military because there were a lot of comments about it, and which required the military itself to instruct its men to refrain from talking about it in social media last year when it first came out. So one thing that we have to say, remember about the Philippine military is that institutionally it is actually very pro-American. Okay, and it manifests itself in a practical physical manner in the exercises that happens, and more than that, even the person-to-person relations. It's something that the Philippine and the US have that no other country has with us. It's the person-to-person relationship between our services that extend even down to unit level. That's why, if you remember, during the Battle of Marawi, we had the US being there. And if you remember, during the crash of the C-130 this year, um, early last month, right? Was it last month or early this month? Early
Yeah,
this
early
month,
this month, sir. Yeah.
the crash of the C-130. It was Americans were also involved in evacuating some of the wounded, or if not many of the wounded. Um, so you would see that level of relationship that could not be undone by this statement of Duterte, this declaration of a plan and intent to terminate it, because it just really was a plan and intent to terminate. What they're talking about in terms of whatever concessions that we got or whatever, it you would not really need to have dramatics to do that, because Americans are already concerned. Everybody is concerned about about what's going on in the South China Sea, West Philippine Sea area. In fact, the United Kingdom right now, its fleet carrier, the Queen Elizabeth, is there. It's here in the South China Sea already, and the Chinese are not exactly happy about that. It was it was it was escorted by the units of the Malaysian Navy when it arrived here, and like I said, that would really show concern, of many countries, and that's why if whatever concessions we wanted from the Americans, we would have actually gotten it from through more mature negotiations and mm, not through dramatics.
So, sir, what do you think influenced President Duterte to withdraw that termination notice?
Well, if I'm in Duterte's position, I would not exactly be comfortable um, about my international image right now, especially he would need all the friends that he needs. Okay, as the year goes by. Okay, for example, we don't know what the ICC will do in the next by the months ahead. Okay. Uh, he would not want to make the Americans angry at the same time get the ICC angry at him also. So that would not. So there are a lot of speculation what he would want. But one of the things that we have to understand here also is the deep relations between the United States and the Philippine security establishments. Okay, you have to. I mean, Lolenzana himself is an example of that. And he was assigned in the U.S. for the longest of time. Okay, and many of our even like for example, let's start from Fidel Ramos. Fidel Ramos is a West Point graduate. A number of our officers are either West Point, Annapolis, or Air Force Academy graduates in the U.S. Okay, and like I said, it's that person-to-person relationship, that makes it easy for the military to lobby for more, for the continuation of the relationship between the Philippines and the United States. Like for example, the Balikatan. It's just one exercise, but there are a lot of other exercises also that allow the Philippines to improve the effectiveness of its combat units, okay, and its other units. And if those things are reduced, then it also reduces the ability of the Philippine military to train, okay, and puts more pressure on it, okay. There's the assistance also that the Americans provide, okay. So especially access to weapons systems. That's why the lead up to this, so we had Americans coming in providing us with well from small ticket items like 50 caliber machine guns and ammunition to some missiles, and then now then there was this offer for the F-16 that would be partly funded by American assistance. But the thing with the F-16 is that our side, I don't know if it's going to accept it, but it's that, it's those level of assistance, that the Americans provide, especially to a hard pressed military. We saw the effect of the absence of the Americans here, and it was a political decision of the Duterte administration not to engage their assistance during the typhoons that hit us last year. So remember, we would always have Americans assist us in humanitarian assistance and disaster response. But last year we didn't. Okay, so we were hit by successive typhoons, and by January our helicopter fleet was experiencing problems. And then now I think 50% of our helicopter fleet is grounded because of the succession of crashes. Okay, our Hueys are practically inoperable already. We have we are nearing to scrapping our Hueys, and the Blackhawks are grounded also because of the accident in Clark. And like I said, uh, uh, the American presence that is brought about by the VFA, it doesn't just answer to China, it answers also to our very fluid situation here when it comes to disasters, and literally and figuratively fluid. So you would have here typhoons, the need for um, rescue, and the U.S. provides a very substantial assistance at in that matter. It's not just force multiplier, because I would not call it a force. It's a I would even call it a presence that practically dwarfs that of the Philippines when it comes to disaster response. Okay, and those are the things that make the AFP perform better. Okay, because it can make the Philippine military husband its resources in a much more prudent and wiser way, instead of the wastage that happened beginning late last year, and then which we are now enduring that I would say a misguided policy of not calling in the Americans when we had all of those typhoon those typhoons ravaging the country last year. So there.
So, sir, how will this make China react? How do you see China reacting to this?
Well, the
Especially,
Chinese.
yeah. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. One thing we have to understand is the West Philippine Sea is a part only of an overall Chinese strategy against the Philippines. Okay, it's not the end all and be all. Meaning to say that the Chinese apply other pressure points on us, like for example the loans. Okay, then you have Chinese presence in our communities, the pogos. Okay, uh, those things that the Duterte administration did um, opened the door to Chinese penetration of our communities, and that's a very significant success for the Chinese. Um, because from there they can influence our politics. Now, but in terms of that hard nut to crack, which is the defense and security establishment, then that's a different thing altogether, because of the fact that this strengthens further contact between the Philippine military and the United States military. Although now we still have the pandemic, and so I don't see anything really dramatic happening, as in you have a flood of activities here, but more on you would have planning, more planning in terms of the military mutual defense board will be able to come up with much more long-term plans, okay, in terms of what are the ways ahead for the year 2022. Okay, or let's say now we can start planning about what's going to happen in the next few months if there is a typhoon. Will the Philippines want to accept American assistance? I mean, like right now, we already are experiencing the habagat or the monsoon, and you already can see what the effect of it is in Balanga, in Bataan. It went underwater. You're going to have a lot of that later this year, and
Mhm.
by that time, our Black Hawk helicopters will still not be up to effective strength, and then our Hueys, I don't know what's going to happen to them. I think they won't be able to bring it back to. I don't know if they'll still bring it back into operational service. There's a problem if you store something and then it's not properly stored, and you'll end up with lesser equipment. But the thing is that um, we do have a impending problem, and I think it would be the best interest of the Philippines to talk with their American counterparts on how to face the incoming typhoon season with all of these limitations that we have now in the Philippine Air Force when it comes to material. I mean, look for example, the C-130. We only
Mhm.
have one flying C-130 now. you know, up until that one in Portugal comes back, you know, but still, you know, you don't have that much assets, okay, to move supplies around the country. So those are the things that I hope that they are more. They would be able to plan ahead on that. That's the more for me. That's one of the more pressing issues is that we will have an emergency of epic proportions when the typhoons start hitting us again with a reduced air force capability.
So
Then
we need the US, sir. Yeah.
we definitely need the US for that, as we've always needed them in terms of. It's not a matter of dependency or what. I mean, or over reliance. It's a cold hard fact. You know, you need the Americans to add your capabilities when to rescue our or respond to our kababayans who are, you know, suffering. I mean, it's bad enough that they have to suffer typhoon ravaging and then ravages and then they have to contend with Delta variant. You know, so those are the things that we have to that our defense planners have to take into consideration. You know, you yes, last year's response and tempo would not be sufficient for this year, especially uh, we have the reduction of assets, but at the same time, you also have the the threat of Delta. I mean, we'll be going into a lockdown on August 5. So let's hope things work out because if not, then yeah, we will be facing at the very least a Vietnam situation, at the very worst, an Indonesian situation.
Sir, one last, so you don't see any backlash from China when we, withdrew our termination of the VFA.
Well, the thing is that the Chinese would look for other ways to weaken the alliance. And you see, the Chinese, they think generationally. They're not like us that we're personality oriented, you know, that in comes one guy, his programs are followed, and then when the next guy comes in, it's a new set of programs together with a new set of people and what have you. Um, but this time around, you know, the Chinese think generationally. This entire success of theirs of having Duterte as a sympathetic or a pro Beijing person, it's hard work on their part, you know, networking with the people here and what have you. So they will find ways to weaken us because they already have their foot in it. You remember, it's not just the West Philippine Sea. Yeah, they will issue some pressure, but they know already that they have us by other means. Okay, they have us by the loans, they have us by the vaccine, they have us by their physical presence already in many of our cities, especially in the pogos, because the pogos will be directed at the local government units. That's the target of those establishments, you know, the to co-opt the local government units.
Okay. Sir, by the way pala, with the
Mhm,
VFA fully enforced without threats of a termination,
mhm.
up to what extent can the US intervene in the West Philippine Sea dispute?
Well, no, it's like this. Okay, the U.S. is there as a presence in terms of physical presence. I mean, they're conducting FONOPs there. Okay, so if there's any conflict there, they're right there in the middle already. Okay, it's not as if they're going to come from Okinawa or they're going to come from Guam. Their reinforcements will, but there's always a presence there in the West Philippine Sea, South China Sea area of the U.S. And these places that I'm talking about, Guam and Okinawa, are just several hours flight time for the Americans. Then another thing is that um, uh, what was the question again?
How up to what extent can the US intervene in the West Philippine Sea
Ah,
dispute with the VFA fully enforced?
well, it allows if again they're going to um, base here, meaning to say, let's say, use this as a staging off area, that they can have a much more constant presence. Okay, they can have more assets that can use our facilities and operate in the area thus providing pressure on the Chinese, no, to behave. Okay, so like for example, um, maritime aircraft can stage off from Cebu or from Clark and then operate in the West Philippine Sea, South China Sea area, monitoring what the Chinese are doing. American ships can continuously use Subic for replenishment and other matters, okay, and repair, okay. Then, or if they need to, then uh, you have the assistance rendered to the Philippine government in terms of Philippine military in terms of training and equipment capability enhancement. So those are the ways that Americans, short of, if we're not going to talk about conflict, okay, but conflict we all know what's going to happen. But short of conflict, that's how they will exercise their presence in the West Philippine Sea, South China Sea area, under the control, under the Mutual Defense Treaty and the various agreements under it, which are the Visiting Forces Agreement and the EDCA.
Sir, thank you very much for your input.